Academia, the sacred breeding ground for ideologies, birthplace of movements of art, philosophy, science, and politics. The ivory tower, where everyone is rational and free-thinking and... yeah, it's not like that. We all know it, right? I love academia. I love being able to conduct my own research. I love the freedom of how to use my time. I love the teaching. I love writing. I love being able to learn about cool shit for a living. I mean, I'm a paleontologist. You don't get much more 3-year-old's dream job than that. I'm unironically still obsessed with dinosaurs, so don't at me. Still, I can't deny that parts of academia, well, almost the whole of academia, is pretty much held together by tiny, increasingly fraying threads. I'm facing part of the problem right now. Coming out of my degree, I paid £6,000 I didn't have to do a master's degree, was unemployed for a year, desperately trying to get a PhD, finished my PhD with my last year completely unpaid, while still expecting to pay for rent, food, and bills, and now I've been employed for another year, applying to every postdoctoral position I can get. Do you know what a career with zero progression over decades, pay so low that at points you literally have to pay to work, and long periods of unemployment with no hope of an escape needs? Extortionate fees for publishing articles, which you need at least 3 of to get a job past PhD level in many cases. The expectation that you'll move cities, if not countries, or continents for every job. Which, by the way, a lot of the time only lasts 6 months to a year before you enter another one of those long periods of unemployment. Needless to say, this kind of environment is really, really bad at retaining anyone who doesn't have a well-off family backing them financially. People wonder why academia has a diversity problem. A lot of the working class in the UK belong to ethnic minorities. If you're working class, it's mind-bogglingly difficult to get a career in academia. The people who manage to break through that barrier are genuinely exceptional. Many queer people are estranged from their family and cut off financially. Men get paid on average more than women, and can therefore afford to save up more for when the next long period of unemployment hits. This is a system that loses unfathomable numbers of genuinely talented and passionate people like water through a sieve. And this isn't even in mentioning the fact that people from wealthy families can literally pay to get a PhD, while the rest of us have to apply for countless scholarships until we find one that will take us. And by that time, you're expected to be published, which often requires a big upfront payment, and the cycle goes on. But this isn't a mistake. This is the way the system was built. It's no secret that academia was, until shockingly recently, restricted to upper-class white men. There was no need to accommodate anyone else, because a lot of people had no intention of letting anyone else in. Our current system was not built from scratch with modern sensibilities in mind. It was built on top of a crumbling castle full of old money and vested interests. Although, I do suspect if it were built today, a lot of the same crap would be in place, given the people who end up in charge of many of these establishments. If we want to make academia a more welcoming place, though, a lot needs to change. The very structure of the way academics are employed, published, and treated as a people needs an overhaul. And an overhaul planned by diverse voices, lest we let the sector do what it always does and pat itself on the back for being oh so very progressive, while it actively discriminates against ethnic minorities, disabled people, and the working class. Writer Beware is a resource for authors published by the science fiction and fantasy writers of America, providing a useful guideline of signs that a publisher is looking to scam you or otherwise screw you over. While this is incredibly useful for fiction writers, many of the items that define a dodgy publisher in fiction apply pretty cleanly to academic publishing. While academic publishing and fiction publishing are entirely different worlds, Sometimes it's a good idea to step outside your own field and try and look at the state of it objectively. If academic publishing looks like a scam from the outside, maybe we should ask why that is, and more importantly, how that tells us the landscape needs to be changed. Two particular warning signs from Writer Beware stood up to me as especially relevant to this discussion. First, fee charging. If you talked about academia to someone who's never taken part in the institution, you might be asked when talking about your latest paper, "Oh, so how much did they pay you for that?" When you explain that not only did you not get paid for it, you paid yourself, perhaps even out of pocket, to publish, you might solicit a raised eyebrow or two. In the literary world, this would be an immediate red flag. Run for your life. You're being scammed. In academia, this is but business as usual. A lot of us believe that open access is the best way forward for public understanding of science. However, if you want to make your paper accessible to all in, let's say, Nature, arguably the most prestigious science journal in the world, you'd end up paying £8,290 or $11,390 just for the privilege. Even the most toxic literary publishers would have a hard time getting anyone to agree to buy into their scheme at that price tag. And this problem goes beyond publishing. PhD tuition costs money, a lot of money, despite technically being a job. Academics that can afford the fee can walk into projects where those less fortunate simply cannot afford the expenditure. Being a PhD a lot of the time requires a master's degree, which requires a bachelor's degree, and even when you have that fabled permanent job, most of the grant money you get to work on new research doesn't even go to you. I'm sorry if it starts to sound like I swallowed Des Capital here, but I find it hard to believe any of this would remain the case if we ran universities and publishers as democratic institutions, instead of trying to force them into profit-seeking models from which they are frankly unsuited. The second Writer Beware point I found interesting was author-unfriendly contracts. For anyone that doesn't know, in the UK, a PhD is typically funded for 3.5 years, although for mine it was only 3. And most people I know finish by around or a little after 4 years, give or take. Once your funding runs out, you're expected to work full-time on the PhD, paying for rent and food as usual, with no income. In fact, universities can be pretty hostile to people who are in danger of not hitting their deadline. It's not my place to go into the story in specifics, but I know of the pressures disabled people are often put under to finish quickly or quit. PhD supervision and management is not built on a passion, but on getting the number of completed PhDs up so that the university looks like a destination for research. Once you get a postdoc, you're looking at a series of temporary jobs, maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years, each likely at a different university, probably even a different country. I've personally heard several academics claim that moving countries is necessary to show the researcher is serious about the career, just a glimpse at the overwork and rest-shaming culture that's absolutely pervasive in the field. Going back to PhD contracts, paid medical leave is normally not available. Several people I know had to have major surgery during their PhDs, with months needed off for recovery, all unpaid. Other people I know tried to get maternity leave and were snubbed. None of this would be acceptable in most jobs, but since PhDs are considered both students and workers, we get the worst of both worlds. Our passion for our studies is expected to be the only thing on our minds. Never mind that we need to eat, sleep, socialise, exercise, or do anything but work until exhaustion and depression takes us. No wonder 33% of students suffer from major mental health issues such as depression and anxiety. And then even if you break through all of it and get a permanent job, you'll be answering to the REF, the Research Excellence Framework, which is the body that evaluates British universities. And what the REF considers excellence has a pretty oversized impact on the expected research output of academics at these institutions. In the past, this has led to a focus on pumping out lots of small research papers at the expense of larger, longer, and possibly more groundbreaking projects. It should be remembered here that the academics being assessed here are experts in their field, and the people best placed to choose how they carry out the research is, well, likely themselves. Granted, at this point, you've overcome the massive financial barriers, horrible trauma, multiple moves, and all that, but you're not out of the woods yet. For all the people who talk about academia like a wondrous haven, for those with a thirst for knowledge, it treats its workers like society treats workers. In all seriousness, I do think that since this problem is a worker boss problem at its core, as much as that might be obscured by the prestige of the university and the magic surrounding the idea of academia, it has a lot of similar solutions to those faced in other workplaces. Number 1, workplace democracy. If your postdoctoral students are suffering, and the people in charge really think that short-term contracts are the right thing to do, maybe they shouldn't be in charge anymore. Maybe postdocs know better than administrators which contracts would suit them better. Maybe lecturers are better placed to decide how their research should be carried out, structured, rather than the RAF. As for the years of out-of-pocket pay and long periods of unemployment, without fixing inequality at the societal level or having a guaranteed safety net, such as introducing a universal basic income or having a benefit system designed to help instead of punish, people would benefit massively from more scholarships, especially for marginalised groups and I might get a bit of hate for this, scrapping fees for graduate programs. No one should be able to pay their way into a PhD when people just as capable are locked out because of lack of money. If we want to improve diversity in academia, and universities claim they do, despite all evidence to the contrary, we can start by getting rid of the way rich people can immediately cut through the hardest parts of the process, leaving academia more rich, more white, and less empathetic to the voices of those that it left behind.